The neon lights of the club painted my skin in hues of blue and purple as I stood there, feeling the pulse of the music through the soles of my feet. Tom, my husband, had always been the one to pull me into these wild nights, his eyes alight, with the thrill of breaking routine. But tonight, something was different. The air was thick with anticipation, and as Tom's hand slipped from mine, I felt a strange mix of freedom and fear. The night was young, and with each beat of the music, I sensed the beginning of a journey I hadn't planned for. What would happen when the music stopped and the lights came up? Here I am, Mila, 32 years old, standing in a nightclub, a place I'd usually steer clear of. My husband, Tom, my high school sweetheart, has always been the one to drag me into these adventures. We've been together for over a decade, and while our life together is comfortable, it's also become somewhat predictable, but not tonight. The club was buzzing with energy, the music was loud and the lights were dim, creating an atmosphere of anonymity and excitement. Tom, eager to let loose after a stressful week, ordered us drinks, his eyes sparkling with the thrill of the night. As we settled at the bar, I couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension about what the night might bring. Tom's adventurous spirit was palpable, his hand on my lower back, guiding me through the crowd. The music pulsed through me, the bass vibrating in my chest, and I could feel the night's potential unfolding around us. He leaned in close, his breath warm against my ear, whispering something about trying something new, something daring. I looked at him, his face illuminated by the strobe lights, and saw the same man I fell in love with all those years ago. But tonight, there was an edge to him, a wildness that both thrilled and unnerved me. As we sipped our drinks, the atmosphere thickened, with the scent of perfume, sweat, and anticipation. Tom's hand found mine, squeezing gently, a silent promise of an adventure. The night was young, and with Tom by my side, I knew it would be anything but predictable. The DJ's voice boomed over the speakers, announcing a special performance, and the crowd surged. The night started with laughter and dancing. Tom, always the life of the party, was in his element, his drink in hand, his laughter mingling with the music. However, as the hours passed, his enthusiasm turned into something less controlled. He began to drink more, his movements becoming sluggish. I watched, concerned, as he leaned against the bar, his eyes drooping. Eventually, he passed out, his head resting on his arms, oblivious to the world around him. I sat there, feeling a mix of worry and isolation, surrounded by strangers in a place that suddenly felt too loud and too bright. That's when I noticed him, a man tall with a confident stride, making his way towards me through the crowd. His eyes locked onto mine, a knowing smile playing on his lips as he approached. "Hey, you look like you could use some company," he said, his voice smooth, cutting through the noise of the club. His presence was magnetic, drawing me in despite my initial reservations. I nodded, unsure of what to say, my mind still on Tom, who was now completely out of it. The stranger took the seat next to me, his arm brushing against mine as he leaned in to speak over the music. "I'm Alex," he introduced himself, his gaze intense, almost as if he could see right through me. We talked, or rather, he talked, and I listened, his words weaving a spell around the chaos of the club. He spoke of adventures, of nights that stretched into dawn, of living life on the edge. His stories were intoxicating, much like the drinks he kept ordering for us. As the night deepened, the club's atmosphere. As Alex's hand brushed mine, I felt a surge of electricity, a jolt that seemed to awaken parts of me I thought were long dormant. His touch was gentle, yet it carried a promise of something more, something thrilling. His voice, smooth and enticing, whispered tales of distant lands and wild escapades, drawing me deeper into his world. The club around us faded into a blur, the music a distant hum as Alex leaned closer. His breath was warm against my neck, his lips grazing my skin in a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "Let's escape this place," he murmured, his words a siren's call. In that moment, with Tom passed out just a few feet away, I made a choice that would alter the course of my life. I nodded, my heart racing, as Alex took my hand, leading me away from the noise, away from the predictability of my life with Tom. We slipped out into the cool night air, the city lights casting a glow that felt like a new beginning. Alex's car was waiting, sleek and silent, a stark contrast to the chaos we left behind. Inside, the world outside seemed to disappear, replaced by the soft hum of the engine and the scent of his cologne, something woody and intoxicating. As we drove, Alex's hand found mine again, his touch now more deliberate, more charged with intent. The conversation shifted from stories to something more personal, more intimate. His questions probed, his eyes searched mine, looking for something I wasn't sure I was ready to give. The car stopped in front of a high-rise, its glass facade reflecting the night sky. Alex led me up, his hand on the small of my back, guiding me with a familiarity that felt both comforting and dangerous. Inside his apartment, the city lay below us like a carpet of stars, and for a moment, I felt like I was part of something grand, something forbidden. The night unfolded with a series of touches, each one more daring than the last. Alex's lips found mine, his kiss deep, exploring, igniting a fire that had been smoldering for years. The room spun as we moved, his hands tracing lines. The next morning, the sun was harsh, and my head was pounding. Tom was already awake, sitting at the edge of our bed, his back to me. The silence was thick with unspoken words. When he finally turned, his face was unreadable. "I saw everything last night," he said, his voice calm but heavy. My heart sank. He continued. "I couldn't move, couldn't stop it. I was too drunk, too out of it." The room felt like it was closing in. He didn't yell, didn't accuse, just stated the fact. Tom's eyes were pools of hurt, his usual warmth replaced by a chilling distance. "I watched you leave with him," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I saw you go, and I couldn't even muster the strength to follow." His words hung in the air, each one a weight on my chest. I wanted to explain, to say something, anything, but my throat was tight, words stuck like glue. Tom stood up, his movements slow, deliberate, as if each step was a decision. He walked over to the window, the morning light casting his shadow long and distorted across the room. "I thought we were beyond this, Mila," he said, not looking at me. "I thought we had something real, something that could withstand the tests of time and temptation." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the pain he was trying so hard to mask. Could feel the tears welling up, but I fought them back. "Tom, I'm so sorry," I managed to say, my voice a mere whisper. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just the night, the music, the freedom from our routine." He turned then, his eyes meeting mine, and in them, I saw a storm of emotions. "Freedom?" he echoed, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Is that what you call it?" Because from where I stood, it looked like betrayal. The air was thick with the scent of our shared history, now tainted by the night's events. Tom's gaze softened for a moment, a flicker of the man I married, but it was Tom's confession was not what I expected. Instead of anger, there was a resigned sadness. "I don't hold a grudge against you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I understand why it happened." His words were both a balm and a blade at the same time. He explained how he had watched, powerless, as I was drawn into Alex's orbit. The guilt, the confusion, and the unexpected forgiveness from Tom created a whirlwind of emotions within me. We sat there, the weight of our marriage hanging between us, each lost in our thoughts. The room felt heavy with the silence that followed. I could hear the distant sounds of the city waking up, but inside, time seemed to stand still. Tom's gaze was fixed on the floor, his hands clasped tightly together. I wanted to reach out, to touch him, to feel the warmth of his skin against mine, but the space between us felt like an insurmountable chasm. "I've been thinking." Tom finally broke the silence, his voice steady but tinged with a sadness that echoed through the room. "About us, about what we've built together." He paused, looking up at me with eyes that held a storm of emotions. "I love you, Mila. I always have, and I always will. But love isn't just about the good times. It's about what we do when things go wrong." His words cut through me, each one a reminder of the vows we had made, the promises of forever that now seemed so fragile. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with unshed tears. Tom continued, "I watched you with him, and I realized something. Maybe I've been too comfortable, too complacent in our life together. Maybe I've let the spark between us dim." His confession was raw, honest, and it made my heart ache. "I'm not saying I'm blameless, Mila," he said, his voice softening. "I've been part of this too. We've both let our relationship drift into routine, into predictability. And last night, you sought something different, something wild, something I hadn't given you in a long time." The truth of his words hit me deeply, making me realize how much we needed to change. In the days that followed, Tom and I talked more than we had in years. We discussed our marriage, our desires, and our future. The incident at the club became a catalyst for change. We decided to seek counseling, to explore what we both needed from each other and from life. It wasn't about forgetting what happened, but understanding why it did and how we could move forward. Our relationship, once on autopilot, was now in a state of active repair. The night at the club, with all its pain and revelations, had paradoxically brought us closer, forcing us to confront and address the underlying issues that had been simmering beneath the surface. We started with individual sessions, where I poured out my feelings of being trapped in a routine, the allure of the unknown that Alex represented, and the guilt that gnawed at me. Tom, in his sessions, spoke of his complacency, his fear of losing me, and his realization that he had taken our love for granted. The therapist, a wise woman with kind eyes, listened intently, guiding us through the labyrinth of our emotions. In our joint sessions, the air was thick with the weight of our confessions. We sat across from each other, the space between us filled, with the echoes of our past and the potential of our future. I felt like I was living someone else's life, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. I wanted to feel alive again, to feel like I was more than just a part of a routine. Tom reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it found mine. "I know," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I saw you slipping away, and instead of pulling you back, I let you go. I thought our love was strong enough to withstand anything, but I was wrong." The therapist encouraged us to express not just our regrets, but our hopes. "What do you want from your relationship now?" she asked, her gaze shifting between us. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my words. "I want us to rediscover each other, to find the excitement we once had. I want us to grow together, not apart." Tom nodded, his eyes meeting mine with a renewed sense of determination and hope for our future. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. If you enjoyed this story, this will help us create more engaging stories for you.